No. Good evening, everyone. This is the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and to remain standing for a few moments to honor all those serving across the world. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Gail, do you want that AC reduced a little, or you're good? As long as it reduces the microphone. Okay, like me? Good evening, everyone, and once again, thank you for attending the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting of August 15, 2018. To my right, we have Robert Anzalone. To my left, it is my left, Sandra Capriglione, Rich Catagio, our secretary, Gail Noggle. All the way to the far side, we have Dennis Lindsay, our engineer, Rick Golden, our attorney, and I'm Maria Hunter, your chairperson. Board members, have you had a chance to review the minutes from August 1st? If so, is there a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. And just for the record, Chris Gerver is not in attendance this evening. All right. First item on the agenda. Public hearing for an amended site plan, special permit and ARB for fitness studio in an existing commercial space located at 300 Larkin Drive in the Harriman Commons Shopping Center. Said property is known on the Village over tax maps as Section 225, Block 1, Lot 16.13. And this is for Orange Theory Fitness, right? Okay, just want to make sure I had the right name. All right, gentlemen, please give a brief overview of what you're proposing, and then we'll go out to the public, see if anyone has any comments, and then we'll take it from there.
Good evening, Dennis Lynch with MA Day.
Is the microphone on, green light? You can pick up the microphone so we can hear you.
Okay. Dennis Lynch with MA Day Engineering. As you mentioned, we're here for Orange Theory. It's located at an existing site that's 4.6 acres, which consists of several buildings along Larkin Avenue. We are proposing in this first building, which is a 5,000 square foot building. We're proposing approximately 3,000 square feet of that building to be converted to a Orange Fitness Club. As I'd mentioned last month, it's a class-driven gym. It's not a coming and going. They only offer classes. There's only a maximum of 24 people in each class. What we are proposing to the actual site is somewhat limited. We are occupying what is now the Payless, what used to be the Payless. We're proposing the Orange Theory signs exactly where the Payless is, Payless signs. Also, the awnings are going to be changed from the existing green to the orange that's shown in the elevations. At the last meeting, you'd asked for color samples, which we have provided here, which I can show to the board. We have the orange, which is going to be the word orange. The red is going to be for the theory. Fitness is going to be the gray. We have a sample of the actual material of fabric for the awnings. Here it's green, but it will be the same colors as the orange that's up on top. That's just a sample to see what the material is. Other than that, there's not going to be any changes to the site. There's enough parking currently there. Not proposing anything to the actual site itself.
Thank you.
Well,
You have a question, Sandy?
I just have one other question.
Go
I know
ahead.
the last time I had asked you, was it going to be by membership? And you said, yes, it's
Yes.
membership.
Correct.
When you have a membership, are you allowed to bring guests at all, or?
No,
No, so it's just strictly membership?
for
Okay,
that member, exactly.
okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay. Dennis, you have anything you want to say before?
Nothing really further. We gave you a report last time. There's been nothing further that's changed that. They are complying with the parking requirements in terms of, it's the same requirements for parking as the prior use. They're really not changing anything in the site plan per se, other than relocating the doors slightly. The largest changes are aesthetic, with the changing of the signs and the colors of the awnings. Unless you have any questions, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
I have nothing further.
Robert, do you have anything to ask before we go out to the
No, I
public?
don't.
Rich, do you have anything to say before we go out to the public? I'm good. Okay, sorry about that. I was just answering one of the village trustees. Gentlemen, I'm just going to ask you to have a seat. I have to open it up to the public, see if anyone from the public would like to speak on this. You could leave that up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And before we go out to the public, let me just read the notice. Notice is hereby given that the Village of Woodbury Planning Board will hold a public hearing at 7:30 on Wednesday, August 15, 2018, at Woodbury Town Hall, 511 Route 32, Highland Mills, New York, in the matter of the application of Orange Theory for an amended site plan, special permit, and ARB for fitness studio located in an existing commercial space at 300 Larkin Drive in the Harriman Commons Shopping Center. Said property is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 1, Lot 16.13. And just for the record, on August 6th, we received the paperwork back from the Orange County Department of Planning. On August 15th, we received the Orange County response, Orange County DPW response, so, which means that we can make a decision tonight once we close the hearing. And we received the revised 239M, I believe. Did we? I think you did submit it, but I don't have it here in front of me. All right. With all that being said, is there anyone in row 2 that would like to speak about this public hearing? Row 3? Row 4? Anyone in the building that would like to speak about Orange Theory Fitness? With that being said and noted, anyone from the board want to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Board members, gentlemen, you can come back up to the podium. Board members, you have any further questions for this applicant?
No.
Robert?
No.
Sandy? Rich? With all that being said, do I have a motion to read the draft resolution of approval?
I'll make that motion.
Well, no, you don't need a motion, just,
I was going to say,
yeah,
go ahead and read it.
go ahead and read it.
Yes,
Oh,
I'll give it to you.
I'm sorry, I'm tired. We have the draft resolution of approval for amended site plan, special permit, and architectural review board. Did you get a copy of the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Review board for John Gregorio, AKA Orange Theory Fitness. So, we're going to jump to page 3, where it says GML 239 referral. You're going to enter the date for August 15th in there, Rick?
Yes.
About the DPW, okay. Then we're going to jump to page 4. Specific conditions, number 1. All applicable conditions attached to the site plan, special permit, and architectural review board from 2001 to the present relative to this property, and any subsequent amendments thereto are hereby incorporated into this resolution and are to remain in full force and effect, and this approval is subject to and conditioned upon satisfaction of those conditions as if they were set forth at length herein. Do we have any number, we don't have anything for number 2, right? Correct?
Yes.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
With all that being said, do I have a motion to accept this resolution as given?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't see that letter.
Gentlemen, I think that's the fastest I've ever had a planning board meeting and a resolution. You're welcome. Once everything is submitted to the building department, they authorize me to sign, it'd be good to go.
That goes through the building department, so I can contact Gary.
Yep, you
Okay.
can contact Maria.
Oh,
All
Maria,
right.
okay.
You're welcome, have a good night. Yes, good luck. All right. Ay, here we go. Get myself together here. What do I do with my? You're welcome, have a good night. What do I do with my minutes? Just give me a second. I don't know where I put it. I'll find it, it's no big deal. Next item on the agenda is the Weiss/Apple Hill, discuss and review ARB application for single-family dwelling located at 26 Apple Hill Drive in Highland Mills. Said property is known under the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 204, Block 2, Lot 1. Here's my minutes. Just give me a moment to... Good evening. Just, is that microphone on, or pick it up towards you? Thank you.
How's that?
That's better.
Okay. I'm Barry Terrick. I'm the architect for the project. We're here for architectural review for single-family residence that's being proposed for Lot 2 in Apple Hill Estates. It's basically an enlarged ranch, one-story living, 5-bedroom residence.
Did you say ranch?
Well, it's a one-story house, so I'll call it a ranch.
But it has two-story?
Well, okay, so let's say.
It's not a ranch. Ranch is one floor.
It's not a ranch, it's presented as a ranch, as in all the plate heights are one story. All the plate heights, all the roofs are sprung from a first-story plate height. There is a second-floor space up there, it is, yes.
I don't care what you call it, it's not a ranch.
We can
We-
call
we're
it,
not
what
gonna-
would you feel comfortable calling it?
A single-family
A house.
residence?
How about a house?
It's a house.
Okay,
Yeah.
single-family
Okay.
house.
It's a house.
It's a house.
Right?
Correct. It's using materials that are similar to materials used in the neighborhood. It's going to be earth tone stucco colors, which I have samples of here. Anderson brown windows. It's the stone on the house. The Hudson Bay stone is actually a large synthetic stone. It's the largest pieces we can actually find on a synthetic stone. It's a combination of browns, in fact. And the roof is an earth tone brown color, three-dimensional shingles with dark green metal highlights.
All right, so on the ARB application, we have what's called Heather Blend
Correct.
for the roof shingles.
That is this.
Which, okay,
Yeah, I can bring samples up.
thank you. Just want to make sure we're looking at the,
This is Heather Blend. You can keep these if you'd like.
no, we don't keep it.
Okay.
You're okay with the Heather Blend? Sandy? All right. So Rick, you have that as Heather Blend, so everything that's on this application?
Everything's on there. I have the
Okay.
samples of. These are the 3 stucco colors. Bring the glasses back.
That's okay. So we have,
Let me grab my glasses.
no, it's okay, I'm just trying to see where it's listed on here. So we have what's called mayonnaise.
Well, we have, yeah,
The names aren't on there.
OC 85.
Yeah, I have to have I have to have,
Okay,
all
okay.
right, so Rick, OC 85, that's called mayonnaise.
That's the trim.
That's the trim.
color, correct. Okay,
And then
the CC, both of these are siding colors.
the
There's-
CC 310 is called Dusty Road. And then CC 320 is Bar Harbor Beige. Okay,
Right.
you see the colors?
Yes.
You good?
Yep.
Good. Rich?
I'm good.
All right, you can take those back.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh.
and this is the roof, where is this listed on here?
That's the metal roof.
It doesn't say on there.
Yeah,
It just says shingles and fiberglass.
metal stone. Oh, I'm sorry about that.
All right, so on the roof, we'll have, it's,
It's these parts right here. will occur. 3 locations, there's one right here. above
so
the-
where,
it's the
oh,
return gables.
where the overhangs are,
Yeah, it's on the actual gable faces.
the gables? All right,
Yeah,
so
There's a return.
Rick, we'll have to get an amended one here, but it's Atlas,
It's ATAS, actually.
oh, ATAS, okay, I can't, it's ATAS, ATAS, it's Hartford Green metal trim, but we'll get a revised.
We need a revised
Yeah.
one in which the applicant fills everything out so we can just, otherwise it's very difficult for the building department to
Yep.
enforce it later on.
No, I'll revise the list.
Okay, and resubmit the form.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And with the, just list the colors, all right, so,
okay.
board members, you okay with that? Mm-hmm. Rich, you see that? Okay, and that's the shingle,
That's the windows, the dark bronze.
and you're going with dark bronze for the windows?
Correct.
You're okay with the dark bronze?
Yeah.
Rich, it's this color here?
Okay.
All right, so we got that. So you'll revise this and you'll print out
Correct.
the
I'll
letters,
give you a
okay.
revised list.
Perfect, and the only other thing on here is the stone, which you don't, did you have a booklet or anything?
You know what, I could.
For the public
sample
hearing,
for you
for the,
last-
for the
yeah.
public hearing, bring the
Okay,
book,
Okay,
all right?
yeah, I actually have a real sample. so.
All right, because for the public hearing, you're going to need that.
Okay.
All right, so that's gonna be revised. Let me put that on here, revised ARB app need. All right. All right, so where else did we leave off? Because you're done?
I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay.
Single-family
Just for the
residence.
record, there's a couple things I needed to have addressed. On your application to appear before the planning board, it says the owner is Apple Hill something LLC. Hold on. Apple Hill Drive LLC, but there's no property signature on here. You signed the top part?
Okay.
I need you to fill out the form. I need the owner.
Okay, so
Signa-
it's here, so we'll take care of that. Okay.
Okay, and then also with that, with the 239M, you have Aaron's first name,
Okay,
but you don't have the business name on here.
okay.
And Rick, do we need to have, just this form is sufficient with,
You have to have the LLC form filled out with the members noted.
okay, so this just needs to be clarified,
Okay.
all right?
Yep.
And then,
I'm sorry.
yeah, it says LLC, but it
Right.
doesn't, and he's the only, and it's, and like, only owner, so you need to update that, okay?
Okay.
Um,
So is the LLC there for it? Is that-
Yep, and
Okay.
that he's 100%. And then the application not signed by owner, hold on, there was something else. GML, ARB form, oh, the ARB, when you update this ARB form, you have to list the square footage. It's not on here,
Okay,
all right?
Sure.
So the total's the 21,417. And then, oh, on the images, that's my question to you. On all the images, you have the address
there's a
listed
wrong
as
address.
1050
I'll-
Scunnamunk.
I will revise that.
All
Apple
those
Hill
forms have to
Drive.
be changed, wrong address. And on the sketch plan, where was it listed? Oh, you have 204-2-1, and then you have 204-2-2. Are you combining two lots, or is it just the one lot? So that's an error?
The owner owns both lots, so he's building on two. So this sketch plan shows, this is his sketch plan for both lots. So,
This house is going
on one lot, no, on one lot, only on two. He happens to own both lots.
All right, so Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, should the plan only have one lot on here?
It's whatever lot is
Yeah.
going to be part of this approval.
Yeah,
Okay.
So-
If this, it doesn't matter what other lots he may or may not own.
yeah.
But if the only thing that's going to be improved is the one lot, then the only one lot. So which is the lot number?
It should be 204-2-2. So they're gonna remove,
Yeah, this is
So
lot
this,
one.
okay, so it's
So
not.
this lot,
yeah.
this lot.
So off of this, Dennis, the sketch plan, we're gonna remove,
Light and Tully sketch, yes.
Yeah.
yes. We're gonna remove, the top one needs to be removed, because we're only dealing with the one lot.
Correct.
Okay, and bing, bang, boom, signature block, oh. And I'm gonna be telling this to all applicants going forward. When plans are submitted, if and when they're all approved, the signature block, bottom right-hand corner, because I don't like going through all these big maps and going left, right, top, bottom, all in the bottom right-hand corner for me.
Okay.
Makes my life a lot easier to sign 100 sheets at a time. Other than that, Dennis, you're on.
This application is before you under the ARB and the ridge preservation requirements of your code. Those code sections have distinct requirements, but they're similar in nature in terms of looking at the aesthetics. Under ridge preservation, you're required to review the application, and it's supposed to be to the maximum extent practicable. Roofs are not visible from the ridge preservation view corridors, or they blend into the hillside. The development is also required to blend into the hillside. In your original Apple Hill review for the subdivision, you reviewed generic models and generic developments so as to make some determinations on that. After that, you received a number of applications from different builders for homes in Apple Hill and reviewed them accordingly. Some, I don't recall all of them, but some of you may required superimposed sketches because of the nature of the location or because of the size. The initial ARB application you received from International Innovative Technologies Group had homes that ranged in size from 3,100 square feet to 4,850 square feet. The second submission that you received from Donnelly Construction, I don't recall the number of homes involved, but it was more than one, went from 2,479 square feet up to 2,942 square feet. There was a third submission by Macon that went from 2,735 to 3,558 square feet. And the last one that you received was for a single house. It came in at 4,479 square feet. So the range of homes that you have reviewed for that subdivision is from 2,479 square feet up to 4,479 square feet. The current application before you has a foundation level that they've listed as 8,800 square feet, a first floor of 8,800 square feet, a second floor of 3,147 square feet, for a grand total of 20,747 square feet. Obviously, it's quite a bit larger. It's about 4 times larger than the largest house that's been approved up in that location. You should consider that when you consider the requirements for ARB and ridge preservation. The applications are required to provide an illustration. Usually that's a photo illustration. If, in the board's opinion, you think that that is necessary for you to make a determination on its compliance with your criteria. In terms of zoning, there's a maximum height requirement of 35 feet. We didn't have the actual numbers on this, on the plan, but it appears that it probably would comply with that requirement. And that is not to the peak of the roof, it's to the average height of the roof when you approach the house. And I think Barry probably provide that information. Under ARB, your code requires that you review the architectural style to see that there is not too much similarity nor dissimilarity and that it fits into the neighborhood. In terms of size, that would be the issue you might want to take a look at in terms of dissimilarity. As far as similarity, there were 4 different applicants on a 21-lot subdivision. This is the 5th, so there's not a great deal of similarity. There are distinct homes there. By the way, just to let you know, there were 21 lots approved in this subdivision. 14 have been developed and 7 are remaining. This is one of those 7 that's remaining. And the last thing I have is that we looked at the plans. We have floor plans on each of the levels. And single-family uses are permitted in the zone. But when you look at this house, it has many of the features of a single-family house. It has bedrooms, it has a living area, it has bathrooms, it has a kitchen. But it also has a second kitchen. It has a large divided room marked men's and women's on the sides. It has bathrooms that are marked men's and women's, and it has a gathering room. And the only reason I note that is because if it's to be used for anything other than a single-family home, first off, there's a question of use in the zone. The other question is that it could impact the septic design, the well supply, parking requirements, as well as applicability under the zoning criteria. So I think you should get some clarification on that so we can make sure that the board has standing to act on this. Rick may have more to say on that. But if it's not a single-family home, you'd have to determine what it is and then make sure you have authority to act. And that's all I have unless you have any questions.
I think you're good for right now. Rick?
Just a few things. Dennis covered a lot of them. One, with respect to the height of the house, Dennis had said that the applicant needs to supply something, I think those need to be on the plans and set forth as to how you're calculating the height of the roof consistent with the village code. With respect to seeker, I would withhold seeker if this is truly a single-family dwelling, that it's going to be a type 2 action. But given what Dennis has said and what the plans represent, I think it is unclear as to whether or not this is really going to be a single-family home. I think the applicant needs to address that in any future submission as to how this is being designed to be a single-family home when it has certain elements that do not appear to be consistent with a single-family home. Obviously, it needs a public hearing, and as Dennis said, this board needs to determine whether or not under ridge preservation that you will require a photo array and simulation, especially given the size of the home as proposed, as to what impact that might have on ridge preservation.
Thank you. Rich, thoughts, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I have a couple. Basically, I'm referencing Dennis's letter dated the August 10th, which was received the day. It says subject public hearing. Is that a typo?
It's ARB, it's not a public hearing tonight. It'll require a
Okay,
public hearing,
so-
sorry.
Okay. So, okay, just want to make sure of that. And then first paragraph, AMSL. I know we have a lot of
Above-
acronyms.
Above mean sea level.
Above?
It's just the typical elevations that you deal with are usually above mean sea level.
Okay. Just
I'll
checking.
go into datums if you want, but I don't think you want to hear that.
Okay, and page 2, under the proposed dwelling, foundation level, 8,000 square feet. Is foundation level described as, is that basement?
It
Because it's
is,
not typical that we,
it's noted as a foundation level on the plans, but there is living space shown in that level.
but typically, if I build a house and I finish the basement after, or one is before or after, is it typically included as living space?
Well, in this particular case, I would include it, I can tell you what's on in the kitchen level. There's a kitchen down, there's a kitchen on that.
But we're
plan.
talking about the basement.
It's the basement, but there's
Sorry.
windows.
Dennis, your mic.
Sorry, I shut this off.
It's a walkout area. There are some windows along one of the sides. It has kitchen facilities, it has bathrooms, it has the living room, the gathering room, it has bedrooms.
So yes, it's a living space.
It's counted as livable space?
Yes. That's
And-
why it's counted on his
Okay,
calculations.
okay, and then further down, it says second floor, which are you the architect?
Yes.
He said it was an attic. Why are we including the attic?
No, there's an attic above that.
Oh, there's a second floor and then an attic above that?
It's not, no.
I'm confused.
There's a, the reason they, I think there was a chairperson that called it an attic, I'm not sure. There's a ground level.
But let's call it a basement. If we start at the bottom, I'm trying to get conceptually, it's not a ranch.
First
So
floor? No,
it's not a
conceptually, I'm trying to
The
do,
reason that I think it was called a ranch is simply because there's one roof level coming.
Right.
No,
Okay, and
no, listen.
that's what the interpretation I think that Barry was using.
There's your attic.
But in terms of floors,
Yeah.
there are 3 floors that are habitable, that are providing bedrooms, and on the 3rd floor, there's bedrooms.
well, you have second floor. So can we keep, can we address
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
how it's addressed in your memo? Foundation level is basement, correct?
Foundation level has a basement in it, yes, it's a foundation level. It contains the uses that I noted.
Okay, first floor, I understand. Second floor, is that livable?
Second floor has some living space. It has an area called the library, has a loft, then it has a couple of rooms that are
The
called
library's on the
attics.
second floor.
It has a bathroom, and the rest is open to below.
Okay, but it's all counted as livable space when we do any type of calculation.
I didn't do calculations of the space, it's
Well,
very broken
that's,
up. But the architect did, and Barry, you listed, I think, on the, I thought it was on the upper floor, I saw that, yeah, 3,147. That's not the open space? Okay. That's the area that has floor in it that
There's
could be
places you
used.
could actually walk. The attics that are listed on the plan are literally, well, they're all lower than 6.5 feet.
All right, but when we go through certain questions about how we calculate things, we're talking about a livable space of 20,000 square feet.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to confirm that, okay. And then under item number 3, we talk about ARB and the code. You said conform that excessive uniformity, dissimilarity, or inappropriate or poor quality design does not adversely affect the desirable. That's the first time I'm hearing that, poor quality. Is that, can you just,
That's out of the code. I've attached
oh.
to the memo the ARB regulations.
okay.
I'm going to say for now, unless it's a typo, I didn't make that up. That came right out of the code.
I never heard that before, that's why I'm asking.
Just, I'm trying to
The
find it.
term poor quality, if you, I'm not sure what that means.
I think it's in the context of
Which subsection?
excessive similarity.
Ah.
Or dissimilarity.
Okay.
I believe. I'd have to check it again, but I believe that.
Yeah, if
So
we
in other
get-
words, if you have homes of a certain high quality, and then somebody else comes in with a home of poor quality, that might be considered excessive dissimilarity, but we'll take a
Yeah,
look at
because
that.
it says poor quality design, which confused me in the Dennis's email. Poor quality design. So, okay, yeah, I like clarification on that. And then, under CEQA, the word we use is critical environmental. Has that been used before, the word critical?
There, in your code, there are certain areas that are noted as being critical environmental areas.
Right.
Or commonly known as CEAs. What we have discussed in the past is that although your code has designated designated it as such, that you need to do more in order for it to actually be considered a critical environmental area under DEC regulations for seeker. And that is that it must be registered with the DEC. The village never took that step. So although they identify this in the code as a critical environmental area, it is not a critical environmental area recognized by the DEC for purposes of seeker because it hasn't been registered with them.
Okay. Okay, got it. And then the last one on number 5, I almost had the same question as Dennis under men's and women's divided rooms and bathrooms, which again, these are certain elements that are not standard in a single-family home. And, you know, when we talk about septic, we talk about parking, they all come into consideration. So I just wanted clarification from the applicant. The two areas where he defines men and women on the enlarged kitchen and the bathrooms, I'd like to know why, and, because it may or may not have an impact, like you said, septic, parking, et cetera. I'm done.
Okay.
Can you get an answer for that, as far as what it is?
Can you respond as to what the foundation level?
What that room,
Well, I think we'd like to give it some further consideration before we
Okay.
move forward at this point.
All right, because also, in your opening statement, you said that there was a large home with 5 bedrooms, but on here, I count 8. So
It
you're
was
gonna.
consideration, yeah, I think we need a little time to consider this.
Okay, that's, I just want, all
should we
right.
not ask any more questions? Or-
Should we not ask any more questions? Are you going to come back with a revised plan, or do you want us to hear our thoughts?
Well, I'd like to hear your thoughts, for sure.
Okay. Sandy?
Okay. Again, I have questions about the plans too, because I counted 3, possibly 4 kitchens in the design.
Okay. There's one,
Let's see
there's,
how we do that.
there's one in the foundation.
Okay, yeah.
Make sure you use a microphone so we can hear.
Okay, there's one on the foundation.
Right.
Here.
And then
Then there's one here,
on the first level?
and then this is that a Passover kitchen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's 3, right? And then this looks like it's set up in the common area. It looks like there's another kitchen set up.
All right, so Sandy, on the first level, you're saying
On the-
there's a kitchen, a Passover kitchen, and a possible third one?
Yes.
So you're looking at 4, okay? All right,
That
I guess my question to Rick or Dennis, in a single-family home, how many kitchens are you allowed to have with a, or Rick, either one of you want to take that for me?
I can't answer it directly,
Okay.
but likely Gary will have something in the state building code as to what is allowable or not allowable within a single-family home. So we can ask Gary as his opinion with respect to whether or not there are elements of this home that are inconsistent under either the village code or under state code to actually define it as a single-family home. Dennis, I guess you'll ask Gary for that?
I'll ask him, yeah.
Rick, I did ask Gary, and he said he took a look at the plans, and he said 3 kitchens, which is not permitted. He counted 3, and he said 3 kitchens are not permitted. So,
Okay,
Excellent.
but what I'd like to, in addition to that, I think it would be good for clarity for everyone if Gary opined, given the plans as presented, whether or not there are elements of that that are inconsistent with the proposed single-family residential use.
Okay. Can you forward that email to Dennis?
Mm-hmm.
That you have from Gary Thomasberger? And Dennis, you can work off of that
Yes.
with his answer and then get an opinion?
Well, I think that the applicant also wants to hear all your thoughts. They may come back with something else too.
Okay.
before we-
okay, I just had a couple more questions.
ahead.
Whoops. Again, on the plans, Barry.
Which level?
Sorry.
Foundation level?
Yeah, on the foundation level, there's a room to the right, that just has a question mark in the box.
Yeah.
This one?
That's a landlocked storage. I mean, there's nothing I can do with that space.
Okay,
Yeah, storage.
It's a storage area.
landlocked,
All right,
yeah.
so it'll, when you come back with you'll make a note of it,
Yeah.
okay.
I guess, and I didn't want you to run away so soon. This other area where it just says basement, that's just all here, where it just
Yeah,
says
that is
basement,
Literally unfinished,
just open basement.
yeah.
Okay.
structure.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Robert,
Yes, on the
Your mic-
foundation plan, the first page,
here.
after the kitchen and the gathering room and before the bedrooms, what is that designated as? Is that designated as any special room
I
of the
guess-
house?
I guess that's the unfinished
Yeah,
basement.
That's the unfinished-
That's what we were just talking
Yeah.
about.
Oh, okay. So on the first floor, you have a living room? Living room? And what's in the front?
Part of the entry floor, because coming in, there's a 1-story space, and a 2-story space.
We can't hear,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay, you gotta use the microphones.
The space when you enter the house is just a reception foyer, and it's open to the living room. It's clear through to the back of the house.
Anything else?
That's this wall.
Take your microphone back.
All right. Just want to add, yeah, I'm sorry, Barry, I just had one more question. And you can probably answer from there. The playroom / sukkah room, does that roof,
What floor is this on?
Those are 3 skylights up there that will open.
that will open?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's on the first floor.
First floor,
There's 3 skylights that will open.
you mean retractable? They're
They're-
Hinged,
retractable.
they'll be hinged.
They're hinged?
Yeah.
These,
Okay.
they're big.
How big are, oh,
Here.
3-inch, so you're calling them skylights?
Yeah.
Anything else from the board members? we touched on, we mentioned about the 35, whoops, I got turned off here. We mentioned about the 35-foot height in general. Visual impact, with the size of this home, being that we've used the word, it's 4 times, in Dennis's report, it's 4 times the size of the current dwelling that the last one was built. The dissimilarity, I need to see a visual impact. I need some kind of a picture superimposed, because this is a very long home. I think we need to have a visual. Do you,
Yes.
board members agree with this? Rich?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the
Maria,
things.
when you say visual, you're talking about the photo simulation that's required under the ridge preservation?
Yes,
Okay.
So
Okay.
That would be
Superimposed.
the house from the street we're talking, I'm assuming?
Dennis, how do we usually do that? Dennis is the
I think
go-to
you gotta-
person on
I think you
this.
should take a look in the code, because it talks about the view corridors. That's one thing, but it also talks about other visual aspects, so I think you should probably go to the code and follow that.
Okay, and I think, yeah, because there's a designated view corridor, see zoning map includes Ridge Road at any time. It's within Dennis's memo, and then you can go to the code with that.
And generally, as I recall, you have had it from a street view to get some kind of a feel for it, but I think also
Yeah.
from the ridge corridors, but I think you should take a look at section 31013
Right
of the
here.
code.
Yes, it should be,
That's
oh,
from
oh,
the
yeah.
original one.
This is from the original one, yes, it's 204, this is 2, this is the one that he's not building on, and this is, so it's 20422, so it's closer to Janice and Van Tassel, that end. Reservoir would be over here on this side. So this lot he owns, he's not building on it, it's the second lot over, which is 2.1 acres. And apparently, that's a question I have for Dennis. Some of the application says R2A/R3A. There's a split in this development? Where did I see that? Someone tell me, where did I see that? Okay, that's where it was, okay. I asked for copies of the original resolutions of approval, and the zoning district says the property affected by this resolution is located in the R2A and the R3A zoning districts of the town of Woodbury. That's from May of 2003.
I think the deep lots, if I recall, this is going back a number
And
of years.
2008.
But I think the deep lots that went up the hillside might have had a zone line going by there,
Okay.
R2, R3A, I'm not sure.
Okay,
I have to look back.
yeah, it's on,
This
that's
is,
where,
this
it's
is
on
an,
their
or
application.
this is a lot, this lot
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah.
It is a valid lot for development for single-family home.
Yeah, that's right, it's on their application.
I
Now,
think it's R2.
Dennis,
Double check.
question to you.
We didn't put it down.
In the 2003 final subdivision resolution of approval, it says all buildings with basements to have footing drains. I need to clarification, foundation level, basement. I need to, that distinction
Well,
of
that's a
what it is.
requirement they'd be required, they'd have to comply with that.
Okay, because I think this particular development, I was on the board at the time, this development was very concerning to the Parks Department and the reservoir and the runoff and everything, so I just want to make sure that the developer is aware. Have you seen the old resolutions?
I have copies of the old resolution.
Okay, and then the retaining wall. It did show a retaining wall in the back corner, so I just want to make sure that it follows what's in the 2003 resolution. Those are the only two things that popped up when I was reading them. Yeah, I was, sad to say, I was on the board at that time. I'm dating myself here. All right, with all that's being said, applicant's gonna review everything, and you're gonna come back to us. Rick, in the meantime, you said you're gonna hold off on SECR, but we did receive a, or did we not? Hold on. All right, so we didn't receive any secret documents, no short form or anything, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, they need to submit at least a short-form EAF,
Okay,
and this board will determine after it gets more guidance from Gary and more clarification from any revised plans as to whether or not to type this as a type 2 action because it's a single-family home, or type it as something else if it's other than a single-family home and otherwise permitted in the zone.
okay. And to the board members, being that this home that's being presented as is currently right now, it is about 4 times larger than the last home that we approved up there. Thoughts, concerns about that? I mean,
Yeah,
it is in a neighborhood, and it's there are other homes around there that are across the street on, off of Scunnamunk, and within that development. I mean, the size of the home, that's significant. And this similarity, what was previously approved, your thoughts on this, or?
Yeah, I think 4 times is excessive, and, I would really, considering this, I would have the applicant really take a look at the size. I'd have a hard time with the size.
Yeah, I guess just after discussion, what would be the proper size? I mean, I know there's a lot of dissimilar homes there, and I didn't see anything in any of the resolutions that limited the size.
Well,
So-
it's not in the specific resolution. It is in the ARB provisions generally that talk about excessive similarity or dissimilarity. And so every neighborhood and subdivision is really viewed under its own particular fact circumstances. So even if there are different size homes, specifically sized homes, or different styles of homes, the planning board still needs to make a determination of whether what you're proposing is excessively, for instance, dissimilar to those that are there in that neighborhood and subdivision as a community. So that's the analysis they will be going through. So you should, in the first instance, try to determine whether or not you think that it's not excessively dissimilar and make a case for it.
Okay.
Or revise the plans to make it more similar to the existing neighborhood and character that's there existing. This was recently addressed as well in connection with just so that you know it's not being picked on here, there was another home in Woodbury Junction that's still going through that same analysis.
Okay, Sandy, you're good?
Yeah.
I'm
Robert?
fine.
All right, so we'll hear from you?
Yes, you will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Barry. And if you resubmit plans, board members, we want the smaller size version, if possible, okay? But the consultants, they love the large plans, okay? Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda. Orange and Rockland, discuss and review proposed expansion of the Harriman Electrical Substation on Melody Lane and construction of a transition yard located in Woodbury Common parking lot. Said property is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as section 225 blocks, block 13 and 70, no, hold on a second. It is blocks 13, 70.2, and 13. Oh, I see what's missing, the section is missing. Yeah, it's section 225, block 1, SBL, and then lots, okay. Dennis, or can you just make a note to, they forgot one little section in there. Is your section 225, block 1, lots 13 and 70.2. All right? All right, so for this application, just bear with me for a second. The substation is 25-1-13, and Woodbury Common is 225-1-70.2. The only thing that I found amiss, and I'm very particular about that, because which one is it? Just bear with me, because there's two here. The Premium Outlet Partners LP is signed by William Pendergast, Vice President. But the form is completely blank. It says corporation, and it doesn't list the owners. So if you can, it's not going to stop you, but if you can get that corrected, and I think it's on the other one as well. Yeah, it doesn't have Orange and Rockland. So there's two 239-M forms that need to be clarified and filled in. Because you have the vice president who signed for Orange and Rockland. So the one that was signed by Orange and Rockland, we need theirs filled out and Woodbury Commons filled out, and then we'll be good with that. And I think that's the only thing that I noticed out of the ordinary. Oh, and going forward, as I mentioned before, I know you showed it, I love all these little stamps. And as I say, if and when it's approved, that all the stamps go in the lower right-hand corner, so I don't have to, because Woodbury Commons is the one that I always wind up with 100 signatures at one time, so.
Understood.
Thank you. So please state your name for the record and use the microphone, and we'll be all set to go.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, council, and staff. My name is Lino Sciaretta, partner of the law firm Montalbano, Condon and Frank. We are here tonight on behalf of the applicant Orange and Rockland Utilities for site plan approval, among other approvals, for the proposed expansion of the existing Harriman substation located at 91 Melody Lane. In addition, there's another application for the construction of an electric transmission yard located in the northeast portion of the Woodbury Commons Premium Outlets, specifically located in parking lot 498 Red Apple Court. Just by way of background, O&R's application is pretty much spawned by the New York State DOT's project to realign Route 17's existing 131 Woodbury interchange, which I'll call the interchange project. This is all part of the future Interstate 86. The DOT project will include new on and off ramps along with the reconfiguration to widen Route 32. But as part of that, the DOT has asked Orange and Rockland to basically relocate a portion of its overhead transmission lines and put them underground between Woodbury outlets and the O&R substation. Now, our project includes the construction of a new transmission yard with overhead wires, where there are two poles that we're taking down and putting them underground, along with two transmission poles outside the transmission yard to support the continuing overhead wires. Also, the substation that's existing will be expanded to accommodate the removal of the overheads and with the installation of the new underground lines. Now, with me this evening, we have our project team. We have Mr. Jim Koza, who is will explain the site plan. I also have our engineer here, Doug Moscato, and our project specialist, Margie Hamill. Also with me is my partner tonight, Mr. Richard Sarajan. So we understand that we need site plan approval. We also understand that we need variances for the fence height and the height of the structures that will be built. I know I've spoken with Rick, your village attorney, with respect to the cemetery issue, which we'll address.
Okay.
And without further ado, I'm going to bring up Jim to just go over the overall site plan and what O&R is looking to do here. Thank
Okay.
you.
Did you say your first name was Nino?
It's Lino, L-I-N-O.
L-I-N-O, okay.
Last name Sciaretta.
All right, what I'm going to ask, if you have business cards, if you can give them to our secretary so she can get your names spelled correctly in the minutes, so we don't misspell, or if all of you have it, if not, just so that we have the correct spellings.
Misspelling is the story of my life.
No, that's why I said, let me hear you say it again, okay. Yeah, I'll tell you my maiden name, not. All right, thank you, gentlemen and lady. Where are you? I know there she is, there. All right, go ahead. Who's next?
Good evening. My name is James Koza. I'm a section manager of transmission and substation engineering at Orange and Rockland Utilities. As noted earlier, we're here tonight due to
Just
the...
bring the microphone a little closer, because the fire whistle happens to be going. You can hold that.
Okay. As noted earlier, this project is necessitated by the interchange project that's being undertaken by the New York State DOT. The DOT approached us over the last few years and requested that we place the existing transmission lines that run from the Harriman substation across Route 32 through the Woodbury Common Shopping Center that currently feed the Village of Highland Falls and the the United States Military Academy at West Point.
It goes up and over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what we propose to do is to slightly expand the existing Harriman substation in this area here, to put in a transition structure which will accommodate the underground cables that would be installed in a duct system, and also at the Woodbury Common Shopping Center in the rear to construct another transition structure to rise again from the underground system and resume the overhead system.
And you have enough space at the substation to work on this?
We have enough property, but the station footprint itself needs to be expanded.
Okay. No problem. Any other questions from the, well, what we do is we have you do all the presentations, and I go to my consultants. Anything else you want to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. Anyone else from your team want to speak, or you're good?
I think we're good, Madam Chair.
All right, you can come back up to the podium, because now what I usually do is we go to our consultants, and you received Dennis's memo, correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Dennis, you want to take it from here?
All right, okay, well, we did give a memo that talked about a number of issues. I'm just going to talk about a couple because the threshold issue here is the ZBA. The only action the board can take is a referral to the ZBA, although it would be a good idea to give the applicant the benefit of any comments that you have. So there are a number of items, and they've recognized that they have to go. The public utility structures are permitted in the zone, and there's only one restriction, and that's the height. And they exceed that height on a number of poles at Woodbury Common. They have 2 poles at 54 feet and 44 feet, if I read it right. And there are 2 other poles that are 68 feet tall, and those will require variances. Further down in the memorandum, we talk about the fences. I think that they'll require variances for that or interpretations by the ZBA. Those are the real threshold questions. There are some other items that we had in here. Under MS4, your requirements and their obligation to get coverage under the permit, I think that they probably can comply, even though it's part of a larger plan, they can probably comply with the requirements simply through an erosion and sediment control plan. I think it's probably all you need, simply because I don't think you're increasing the impervious area in Woodbury Common. I think you'll probably be holding it, is that correct? Yeah. So I think that can probably just be a statement that you provide and information on that. The cemetery issue, I'm going to defer most to Rick, because I think that that's something that it's not in zoning, so Rick will have to talk about that. There was an action that you took back in '97 when the improvements were considered at that time, and actually the roadways were built around the cemetery. There was a seeker review, and at that time, based upon the code, there was a 30-foot buffer established. There's now a regulation, I'm not sure when it came into place, but there's a regulation for 200 feet for activity from the cemetery and a buffer. We gave some other requirements and some other notations in here, and I'm not going to go through those other than to say that the applicant should consider all this. If there are problems complying, we can talk about it further, but hopefully they can comply with all of the recommendations and the comments that we gave in terms of compliance with our code. If the board has any questions, I'll be happy to go over anything.
Do I look like I have a question?
Yeah, you look like you have
I
a
know stuff like
question.
this, Dennis.
Go ahead.
Under G, stockpile, when you
Yep.
said, additionally, the applicant should confirm the excavated material will be tested before removal and disposal. Who tests for it? What are they testing for? And where is it disposed of?
It depends. If you move any soils these days off of a site, particularly if it comes off of the Harriman substation, if they need to remove materials from there, I would think they'd have to have it tested. They generally have a SPCC plan, spill prevention kind of control measures plan. I assume you'll have one for this station, or if you need it? Okay. So that is to protect the area because they use materials that could, if not
That's
controlled,
2,000 feet.
lead to some pollution. So they
Yes.
have a plan for preventing that. But if they're going to take soil off the site, if I was receiving those soils, I'd require that it be tested.
The Superfund site, is that Napera that we're talking about? 2,000?
Generally, if, in this
That's
area,
within-
when you
that's
see
within 2,000
Superfund,
feet?
you don't, this is not a site, no.
So why, so you're saying the EAF indicates it's indicates is within 2,000 feet of a Superfund site.
Right.
It is or it isn't?
It is. When they
Which-
fill out the mapper, the EAF mapper will identify certain answers to questions
Right.
in that EAF. It identified that. It said that there's a site there. It's within 2,000 feet. My suspicion is it's the Napera site that's been identified. As long as it's not their site and they're not doing anything on the site, it's not, they're excavating on a Superfund site.
But I'm just asking,
Oh,
from Woodbury Common to Napera, that's more than 2,000.
But this was
Yes.
automatically generated by the DEC.
and if
Yeah.
there's,
So they,
Okay, I'm just
as soon as they
curious.
plug in the site, the form automatically generates all these various things, one of which is this. Whether or not it's accurate or not is a whole other issue.
Okay,
It's
I'm
simply
just-
something taken from their database.
Okay, I'm just curious as to what Superfund site they're talking about.
Well, the applicant should
If they
try
can
to find
give
out
us-
from the DEC
Okay.
if it's the Napera site or whether or not it's another site that the DEC was referencing.
you can dig into it. They get, when they do that, they usually give the site number. I
Okay.
didn't drill down to
All right,
to
so
find that.
Right,
you'll get that answer to us, or you know it.
correct. No, I don't know it right now. We are planning to reuse that material as much as possible. And
Okay.
if we have to take anything off-site, we can test it.
Okay. Sandy, go ahead. I'm sorry to
No,
cut
that-
you off, because I'm like,
No, I was just trying to go ask because that's where Dennis was in the memo.
yeah. Do you have other questions for him?
No.
That's it?
I have a question.
For Dennis?
Yes, Dennis,
Okay.
you said the barbed wire is not allowed by the code and they would need
Yes.
ZBA relief. Is the barbed wire there for safety purposes, for animals or people,
They
climbing
can
in?
describe it better. I expect security, but,
The fence around our substations are there for security reasons, for safety for the general public. The NESC code requires a certain height. Orange and Rockland standards require a certain height. That's why we're proposing a 7-foot chain link with the 1 foot of barb.
Okay.
Yeah, because when we have cell towers, I don't think we have barbed wire on them, but there are certain designs to prevent
Climbing.
climbing.
Yeah.
And I know down at the cemetery, we had that as well,
Right,
so that people don't decide to climb a fence and go inside, so,
exactly.
yeah. Now, Dennis, are you finished?
yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is going where used to have a fire station, which was a farm market, that's that parking lot. That's opposite, you have the cemetery, you have the road to the salt
I guess that's right,
shed.
yeah. That went
Right.
away a long time ago.
All right.
Right.
Because I know Woodbury Common has done a lot of work to bury the underground
The conduits?
conduits, thank you. And I know they put a section in the center of that parking lot, there, it's marked out. Going forward, if maybe we can have someone spray paint, some kind of spray paint to show us where the area is going to be, because I don't know if the board members want to have a visit to see what the current substation, I'm presuming the substation has a 7-foot chain link fence with barbed wire on it already? The substation?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. I don't know if the board members want to go as a group or individually. We can't get into that particular area, because usually we like to see what we're going to take from there and put down at Woodbury Common. And being that it's near the cemetery, and there's a lot of people go through that section, and the buses pass it, and people walk by it, so I want to make sure, one, it looks good, and somehow I don't know how you're going to camouflage a 54-foot and 44-foot pole, but it's better than being on Route 32 where it originally was going to go. So that one I do appreciate. Yes, it was going to go to the entrance on, so I appreciate Woodbury Common and Orange and Rockland working together to get it moved towards the rear of the facility. With the cemetery, Rick, you said you're going to look at that?
I have looked at it.
All right. Yeah, we didn't have your opinions yet. Would you like to
No.
opine, Neil?
Sure.
Slid right into that one.
With respect to the cemetery, there's a provision in the code, Chapter 109, which is outside of the zoning code, that limits improvements within 200 feet of listed cemeteries, and also says that the planning board may apply that to other cemeteries that are not so listed. This cemetery is listed.
Right.
That 200 feet came into play in around 2008, 2009, according to the zoning code, which postdates the provisions noted in Dennis, this is a memo with respect to seeker, and the prior town code on this. So as a result, the way I read the chapter, and I know counsel, and he can address this, has a different interpretation, but the way I read a plain reading of this chapter is that it prohibits any structures such as what's being presented within 200 feet of that cemetery. It also allows the planning board to potentially require other visual buffers if necessary. I think if the applicant does not agree with that plain reading, then needs to ask Gary, just a simple written request from Gary, asking Gary to go ahead and give his interpretation of that. It's not in the zoning code, but I think that that will be helpful. It'll be a determination by him, since there are provisions in that section that deal with the building inspector and whether or not the building inspector would issue a building permit. So I think Gary would address that by saying that if I were asked to give a building permit with something that's within 200 feet, this is my conclusion. If the applicant doesn't like that conclusion, because it's a determination of the building inspector, can be appealed to the ZBA, not as a variance, and really not technically as an interpretation, but simply as an appeal of a determination by the building inspector, in which the ZBA is allowed to stand in the shoes of the building inspector and make its own determination, which may be more favorable to the applicant. But I think that in order for that to happen, there needs to be a request by the applicant to Gary as to what he would do if they were going to apply for a building permit under their current plans relative to this Chapter 109 limitation. And obviously, in their request, it could be very simple, or they could go ahead and make a lengthy case for what they believe it ought to be. That's up to the applicant.
Okay.
Since there were obviously improvements made within 200 feet of that cemetery which exist, my take on that is that those would now be pre-existing non-conforming structures, and so they obviously can remain and can be modified to some degree, but they couldn't be enlarged. So it's not like everything has to be torn up that's within 200 feet. But this is a proposed new structure, and as I said, I think the planning board can only give a plain reading of this, that's prohibited. The other issue I wanted to bring up is with respect to seeker. I think that this board can declare its intent to be lead agency. I think that they should revise the EAF in accordance with Dennis's memo, indicating that there ought to be a couple of changes to the EAF. We can prepare the Part 2 EAF for the board, and we will, as well as the applicant, I believe, look into whether or not the DEC trigger on the mapper for the Superfund is NEPARA or something else. So
Okay.
as far as an action, I would go ahead and type this as an unlisted action and declare yourselves intent to be lead agency, which will be circulated to the ZBA, DOT, SHPO, DEC, and potentially Army Corps of Engineers.
What about, we don't have to include Harriman, being that they're neighbors? I just want to be sure.
It's not that close to Harriman.
Yes, it is. It's right, it's across the
Oh,
street.
that's right, that's right.
It's across the street from
I'm
Mercedes.
thinking only about the Woodbury Commons
Yeah.
site. Okay, yes,
Yeah,
Harriman
just-
should be in there as well.
Okay. I don't want to.
Thank you.
I don't want to upset Harriman.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rick, just, I mean, we can talk about this further, but on Chapter 109, and I'm just looking at this now, but it states in subsection A, 109-4A, that no commercial and/or residential structure. Given that this facility, I don't know if I'd call it commercial, it's definitely not residential, would it be the interpretation that this would qualify? Because again, it's a utility, and I'm not sure if you would equate that to a commercial, like, I'm just throwing that out there.
My advice, it's a very good point. My advice to this board is that they don't have the power to really interpret a statute and try to break down as to how it ought to be interpreted when terms are ambiguous. That what this board can do is only have a plain reading of it. I think that's a potential argument that you have with the building inspector, that in fact this may not apply because it's neither commercial nor residential, so it's neither fish nor fowl, it's something else, and therefore possibly not controlled by this. But that would have to be a determination by the building inspector as to whether, based upon that, he would either issue or not issue a building permit, and therefore you could take it from there. But I think that's a valid point for you to raise with them. But for this board, I think that they need to take a very plain reading of that is likely to include everything, the commercial and residential.
And just so the board's aware, and I think you mentioned it, Madam Chair, that this original transmission station was going to be in the front of Woodbury Outlets, right on 32.
Yep.
And with Simon Properties and O&R, we started discussing this, and they said, you know what, we don't want the gateway and entrance to the Woodbury Common Outlets to have this transmission building right front and center. So that's why they decided to put it where it was, and it was for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's way back there, and it's in a parking area that really only gets utilized, and you've all been there pretty much during the holidays and Memorial Day weekend. Other than that, that lot's not really used that much. So in terms of even loss of parking spaces, that was probably the best place to put it. We do understand that we're not within the 200-foot buffer with respect to your Chapter 109, but as Rick did mention, there are existing structures there, which we're going to call them non-conforming for purposes of zoning, even though this is not in your zoning code, that are already encroaching, and I'm just looking at a sheet that I have here. You have one structure, actually from the existing building, one of the Commons buildings, it's 105 feet. There's a maintenance shed there, it's about 40 feet from the cemetery. So you have structures that are there. Again, it's something that we'll present to the building inspector to take a look at, but just from a high level, the reason why that structure is where it is because we didn't want to have it, and nor did Simon want to have it right in front of 32. So, again, it's something we'll deal with the building inspector and get some further clarification on it, but
All
I
right.
just wanted to add that.
All right, so on our end, we have to do a couple of things. First of all, do I have a motion from the board to declare this an unlisted action?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll offer a motion that we declare our intent to be lead agency on this application.
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so those two things, let me just mark that here. 8:15:18. All right, so that's taken care of. Sandy, did you want to ask something before I go further?
Well, I did, because you brought something up that was in Dennis's memo about parking. And he said the applicant should confirm the net change is the same as that considered in the board's April discussion. Is
Okay.
that,
Our discussions with Simon Properties is that there is no net change to the number of parking spaces. The transmission structures that traverse the parking area have islands around them which do not permit parking. They will be removed when the overhead structures are removed, and the structures that are displaced by the this parking spaces that are displaced by the transition structure will be relocated to those islands where the
okay, so
overhead
instead of
structures are.
gaining one, it's just going to be flat?
It's
It's going to be a wash?
It's basically a wash.
Correct.
Basically a wash.
I'll check that with Bill
But you'll-
Pendergast,
We'll
because
confirm it.
last time they said it was +1, but even if it was neutral, that would be okay.
Yeah.
But I just want to check with Bill, make sure that's correct.
I believe that the foundation for one of the steel poles is
I just
going
need you to use the microphone,
I'm
please.
sorry, the foundation for one of the steel poles in the rear there will actually encroach upon a parking space.
Okay.
And that space will be lost.
Okay. All right, so that'll get confirmed. So there's two things here. You need a referral from us for the zoning board, but I guess your first step is to go to the building department, see what the building inspector's interpretation of the chapter 109?
109, Chuck.
109 about with the cemetery versus commercial, residential, or utility. So with that being said, we can authorize Dennis to send you to the ZBA for the fence height, for the substation and the transition yard. and the structure height, and then we can also include the issue of the 200-foot buffer at the cemetery, pending Gary's
pending
interpretation.
That's if
So
they appeal Gary's. You're
If they
not
appe-
really
if-
referring
right.
that, so,
But
okay.
That'll
think
be,
you-
that's on you, on
I'd
how
rather
you,
go, yeah, I mean, if you could refer it to the zoning board, again, with the understanding that that component, the one, chapter 109, may or may not be in play by the time we
Yeah.
get to the ZBA,
Yeah.
which I think, from my calendar reading, I think it's the October meeting, because you have to do the GML referral as well. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to get to the ZBA without seeker or, within that 30-day window. So I think you're looking at October, from what I spoke to Rick's colleague, Kelly.
Kelly?
Yep.
yeah. And then also, Rick, they'll be going with the ZBA and us, and we have to finish coordinating this, because we're going to be intent to be lead agency.
Yes, they can go ahead, and we're going to be sending out that notice of intent shortly. And it'll be 30 days. They're going to be likely beyond that by the time the ZBA is ready to give a decision. If you, at that point, are ready to make a determination of significance, you could do so. The ZBA can proceed on a parallel track up to but not including actually making their decision until you make your decision of your final determination.
All right, so you can work. All right, anything else?
Do we have to have a motion to send them? or-
Usually, we do have a motion to request Dennis to, or authorize Dennis to prepare a memo to the zoning board to referring them for the necessary items that we've noted here, and any other items that you deem necessary, it's incumbent upon you to put it in the application. All right?
Understood.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? We're okay, board members? All
In favor.
in favor? Aye?
It's getting
Aye.
late.
I'm sorry, I'm very tired. Anything else from the applicant?
In terms of a public hearing, I guess this is going to require one on the site plan. Is that something that the board would schedule tonight for a public hearing, or is it?
I don't think we're at that point yet, because
Okay.
you have to get the interpretation from building inspector, you have to go to ZBA. I mean, we could, what do you think, Rick, Dennis?
I think you have before you the plan. The only thing that may change is that if they have to move it to be more than 200 feet, then that would be a change. I'm not sure that's that substantial change for public hearing purposes. So you could go ahead and set one. The only trouble that the applicant faces is that if you do set one, and then they have to change the location from where it is, and it's somehow deemed to be a substantial enough change that you have to have another public hearing.
Right.
So I think it'd be most advisable to the applicant to wait a little bit and see where you are in that issue, and then go ahead and then not chance the possibility of having two public hearings.
Okay, we'll do that, because I mean, if we do decide to do that, obviously, we don't want to trigger another GML review. We have to change the plan, and so we'll hold off until hopefully the next meeting
Okay.
to do that. So thank you.
Okay? All right,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Have a good night.
Good night. Dennis, anything, field changes? We're good? What's the status on Mercedes? Sorry, but you're good to go. It's something I could.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you. Did you? Microphone? Oh, you want me to close the meeting? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Have a great evening, and look at it, it's 10 to 9, yes.